All right, we also have with our tissues, the simplest form of tissue, or can be the simplest form of tissue, is a membrane. Okay, and a membrane is important for secretion. Okay? A membrane has at least two tissues coming together, and is essentially an organ. And these membranes, however, are found throughout different types of the body. So they don't necessarily go to one system or another, but are important for individual organs and systems. So we have two types. The first type is connective. So connective tissue membranes. And best example of this is the synovial membrane. Okay, which is important for your joints, right? For creating a lubrication between articulating pieces that would normally, grind together or squish together and cause damage towards each other. We have a little cushion fluid created by the synovial membrane. All right, and then our second type of membranes are epithelial. All right, and so we've got mucous membranes. It is a good example of an epithelial membrane. You think, where is mucus produced? It's produced. Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. But on the epithelial linings, in your nose, in your lungs, in your trachea, that's where it's occurring. Okay, so there's a couple others, but that's all we'll do for now. All right, now we're going to go over the epithelium function and location. Now, the figure in your book has a lot more functions, a lot more locations that we're going to go over. So we'll just have you memorize one as an example, okay? So for the purpose of this next exam, just know the one location we're going to talk about. But do understand, these can be found in other locations as well. And these are the same epitheliums or epithelial tissue that we talked about in lab. I'm going to organize it a little bit differently on here than we did in the video lecture. But for the most part, they are structured or named by their structure and or their shape. Okay, so we have a simple, which refers to what? What do we remember from lab? One layer, right? And we have multiple layers, which is stratified. So our first shape that we're going to introduce then is squamous. Which means flat and scale-like. Okay, so they're kind of like something like that. Not quite round. Okay? Flat and scaly, exactly. And these are a great example of how the structure is tightly associated with the function, right? So in a simple squamous epithelium, we know it only has one layer. So it's not going to provide a really great barrier for things. Okay? It's actually something where we want things to go through. Okay? So its function is filtration and or sometimes it secretes substances as well. So, for example, in the lungs, in the alveoli, which are the sacs at the very, very, very end of your lungs, which then run parallel to the, or right up next to the capillaries, you want oxygen and carbon dioxide to go in and out of there, right? Even though there is this thin, simple squamous layer between the two, you still need to allow for oxygen and carbon dioxide gases to diffuse through there. So that's what's occurring at the alveoli. But they also secrete a substance to keep those from collapsing, to keep those alveoli from collapsing. Okay, do you guys remember what that was called? Surfactant, good, right? So simple squamous, for filtration or secretion, they secrete those, that lubricant, and allows for oxygen and carbon dioxide to filter through the lungs into the blood. Okay, so stratified squamous is our next one. All right, so now it's layered. Okay, we have lots and lots of layers. What's a good example of where you'd find stratified squamous? We talked about in lab. Your skin, yeah, your outer layer of your skin. So that's what we're going to do for our location. So why do we have stratified squamous at the outer layer of our skin? Okay, it's a good barrier. What was that?
It will just like slough off.
Sloughs off, right? So if something, bacteria comes and maybe lands there and starts eating the outer layer, well, it's just going to fall off anyway. So it can help prevent infection, or if a piece of skin gets damaged, another layer is coming right underneath it, okay? So the function for this is protection. Right? Structure and function. All right, so let's do simple and stratified again. And let's do it again. But now let's change the shape, okay? So we'll start with our cuboidal cells. All right, now these are generally lining glands, or they are associated with glands surrounding a lumen, an area which is open. And they are for secretion or absorption. Okay, so there's something being produced by these cuboidal, more robust cells than our little squamous cells. All right, they're more than just for protection. Now we're producing something. So the cells themselves become bigger and enlarged. There's some product going on in there, and it's being secreted. Okay, so the shape has to do with its function. If you tried to have a fully secretional, or you tried to do the same thing that these cuboidal cells are doing with a squamous cell, it wouldn't have enough, okay? Wouldn't be able to produce enough. So it's for secretion and absorption, okay? An example of that is in the kidney cells, okay? The kidneys are secreting and absorbing a lot of substances as filtrate passes through to try and get the balance of ions that you're going to get rid of stuff and stuff you're going to keep. All right, stratified cuboidal. Just another layer for more secretion and absorption. Okay. And I can't remember the location for this. It'll come to me though. We're going to come back. All right. The epithelium, next one that we're going to do is simple columnar. Okay? And it has a very similar function. Stratified columnar is actually very rare, okay, but by adding those layers, we also add this layer of protection that we also did with the stratified squamous. And also associated with secretion. Okay, so what's nice when you do it in this order, these three are all the same. Okay, so you can kind of put on repeat for those three if it helps you to understand things within order. All right, and now we have two more that kind of break away from our traditional simple and stratified in shape. Pseudo-stratified. Columnar. And these are often ciliated, okay? So they often have cilia on them. The purpose of the cilia is to move the mucus or move something up and down the lumen. So movement and secretion, okay? So again, they're moving mucus, so they have to have some sort of something next to it to secrete the mucus. All right, and you find this in, okay, the trachea. Okay, this one is ureter. This one is, not that's it. We'll go back. Okay, last one. Is transitional, and it doesn't, again, kind of breaks from our shape and arrangement. And it is in areas where you want it to stretch, so its function is for expansion. Okay, and you will find this in the bladder. Okay, so stratified, it's coming back to me. Okay, sweat glands often have stratified cuboidal. And you can find simple columnar in the GI tract.
Parker, I have a question.
Yep.
So, in the book, it talks about the stratified cuboidal is being a protective tissue. So, but with like sweat glands, it makes sense it is secretion and absorption. And so I'm wondering where the protective comes in.
Well, if it's stratified, you could add another layer if you want, put protection.
Okay.
But if it's stratified, then it does give you that extra layer of protection too.
Okay.
Yeah. So you could generally say stratified is protective. Yeah.
Would females have a little bit of transitional in their body since they have stretch marks, or would that be something different?
That is actually, the stretch marks can happen in males and females. That's just where the skin actually stretched too much and it was replaced by connective tissue. Okay. Okay, so I made up an acronym for this. This may or may not help you. But if you just do the first letter, okay, and you can come up with a better one if you want. But I was thinking, okay, little sweaty kids smell good under the bath. Okay? Which is true. It's when they smell the best. So I said, little sweaty kids smell good under the bath. Okay, so that works for this class. You know, this isn't going to get you by in med school or anything, you know, because you're going to have to know all the different locations. And towards the end of A&P too, once we get through everything, you'll notice, all right, these tissues are in this location because of its function, which coordinates with its shape, you know. But these will get you started, right? So these will get you thinking about those locations, what's going on in those locations, and why those epithelium are placed there to help with their function. Okay, did anyone think of a better one? No. I didn't think so.
I wouldn't even try.
Yeah.
We're also not.
Respect. Yeah. Yeah, you go to college for 15 years, acronyms just pop right out of you.
Just get a degree in acronyms.
We should start the major. SVU, acronymology. Yeah. The class itself would have to be an acronym. All right, so I'm not going to put pictures up in class, in lecture on the test, but you'll need to know these things. And this is a great matching question, right? Got like 5 things on the side, 5 locations or 5 functions. You guys have to match them up, okay? All right, so another thing about epithelium is they all have polarity, which means it has ends, 2 ends, which are different, okay? The epithelium is generally surrounding the outside or the internal environment, okay? So depending on whether you're on the inside or the outside, that would be, well, that's always going to be superficial. Okay, and then this is where we have the lumen. Okay, does everybody understand what a lumen is? A lumen is just the hollow space, generally in a hollow organ. So it's going to be the inside of your intestines or the inside of your trachea, where the air is. If it's not the lumen, it may be the external environment, right? So the actual air. So our skin, the outside, the superficial part, is going to be up against the air. Okay, and then it has a deep end as well, right? All right, but how would you characterize the epithelial tissue which I have drawn here? What would you say these are? Okay, yeah, I didn't draw them distinctly one or the other, but simple cuboidal or maybe columnar. But you could tell then just by looking at their arrangement and shape what they would be.
It's simple because it's one layer, right?
Correct, yeah. Good, yeah. All right, so under every epithelial tissue, though, you also have deep to it a connective tissue. All right, and I just do a random one. This is probably, I don't know, some areolar tissue, okay? But you may have like an adipose tissue there. You may have blood vessels with blood in there or bone. But you're going to have some form of connective tissue underneath the epithelium. And so there needs to be something tying those 2 tissues together. And that part is called then the basement membrane. All right, basement membrane.
Can you tell me what lumen means again?
Okay, so the lumen is the space, the round space of a hollow organ. So the inside of the intestines, where the food would be, or the inside of the trachea, where the air would be. All right, so what this is, I drew some funny things in here. But what we have here are actually two sets of peripheral plasma membrane, peripheral plasma membrane proteins tied to a string of glycogen or a string of sugars, okay, or glycoproteins, okay? So this little green guy with the red circles off of it, the green part would be the protein part, and the red part would be the string of sugars. And they both tissue types have glycoproteins that interconnect to form bonds between them to act like an adherent or a glue, essentially, to stick them together. Okay, so what holds the basement membrane together are these glycoproteins and the bonds that they form between them.
So are they only communicating with the ones that they're directly attached to, interact across each
Yeah.
other as well?
Yeah, I just drew a few of them, but there's tons of them, and they're all like, interconnected. All right, and so these, we can separate these two into the basal lamina from the epithelial tissue and the reticular lamina from the connective tissue. Okay, so that red dotted line is just imaginary.
So the red line is separated by the basal lamina and the reticular lamina in the middle of it?
So yes, so the glycoproteins from the epithelial tissue form the basal lamina. The glycoproteins from the connective tissue form the reticular lamina. They combine to form the basement membrane, which sticks those two tissues together. Yes?
So is it only the glycoproteins themselves that are charged to hold it together? Or is it like we're talking about the cells have a charge? Does that play into this at all?
No. So this isn't stuff being secreted or exerted. I'm not sure what your question is.
Was it because you said these are connected, or the connective tissue is connected to the
Reticular lamina?
yeah, is that connected, you said, by a charge with the glycoprotein?
No, it would be if they're sugars, and actually I'd have to look this up to be sure, but my inkling is that they're forming a bunch of hydrogen bonds between each other, between the sugars.
Okay. But it's only glycoproteins, it's not like glycolipids or...
Right, it's the glycoproteins that are forming that. Yes. Okay, any other questions? All right, so now we're going to talk about glands, okay? Glands are for secretion. Okay, and we can split them up in 3 different ways that we're going to talk about. We can talk about where they secrete things, okay? And they may secrete things in or out of the cell. And we would call these exocrine glands. Okay, what's an example of an exocrine gland? What's that? Yeah, your sweat gland. Perfect. So you're secreting something outside of the body, or your mucus glands are secreting something into your into the lumen, which is technically outside of your body, right? If you want to think about it. So technically, our digestive system is outside of our body, right? Because you have a hole from your mouth to your anus. It's just a big long tube. That's all it is, right? Right, exactly. So when you eat something, it actually never enters your body as the complete hamburger, you know?
So you can eat anything you want.
Exactly, that is the point.
Wow.
I should write a book on this. The anything diet. It never actually goes inside you. No, right. So you break it down into small pieces and you absorb it across your intestines. But it, that hamburger still stays there. It just takes on different form, and it leaves. So you are essentially a donut. Okay, you have a big hole in the middle, and you are the outside. The donut diet. I like it. Okay. I better patent that quick though. But yeah. So anyway. The trachea, your lungs, that's an external part of your body as well. It's just a tube that goes from your mouth down into all these branching tubes which become your lungs. So mucus glands are also exocrine. All right, so the other type is endocrine. Which then secrete substances inside of your body. So they are trapped by other tissues. And generally, endocrine glands are going to release into the interstitial fluid, which then makes it to the bloodstream. Okay, and most endocrine glands then are secreting hormones, signals to other parts of the body to make changes there. Okay, and when we have a whole system, our endocrine system is made up of glands which secrete hormones into the bloodstream. All right, structurally, we can have unicellular or multicellular. And so what a unicellular gland might look like, let's say we have some simple columnar cells here. And then you have this one cell mucus gland called a goblet cell. I'm not making that up. That's real. Somebody did, yes. It kind of looks like a goblet. All right, but it's just one cell. It's squished in with all these other cells. And if you look under the microscopes or the slides that on the histology.com thing, you'll see these. You'll see these interspersed among your simple columnar or simple cuboidal. And it'll be secreting, mucus or whatever. Maybe not on your slide, but. On the other hand, a multicellular gland is going to have lots of cells got a little bottleneck there. Anyway, I'm not going to do that all the way around. But basically, this duct that we created has all these cells that are working together to secrete a substance out here. So there are gastric pits in your stomach that look like this. All these different cells within there secrete different substances, or can secrete different types of substances, including hormones to help you know when you're hungry or when you are full or when you ate something that tastes delicious or gross, right? But it's a multicellular structure that forms the gland.
Would a pore be considered multicellular?
Say again?
Would a pore be considered multicellular because it's
So the gland, the pore itself is just the hole.
yeah.
The gland on it, I'm not sure actually if sweat glands are multicellular. I think they're actually unicellular. It's just actually one cell that forms, but yeah. All right, functionally then, so how they secrete their substance is also how we can classify them.
So these don't run parallel like.
No. Yeah. No, you can have a unicellular endocrine gland and a unicellular exocrine gland. Right? So these are just different ways that we are classifying them. All right, so we can have a merocrine gland, an apocrine gland, and a holocrine gland. So a merocrine gland is where the product is produced inside the cell and then released by exocytosis. Okay, but it's not a part of the cell, it's just produced in there and then released. So merocrine refers to that, it'll make more sense when we talk about the other two.
What would be an example of merocrine in the body?
So sweat. Okay, so sweat is a substance, mostly has salts in it, and some other antibodies and stuff in it, but it's made in the cell and then secreted from that. Yeah.
You're saying only sweat is leaving, none of the plasma membrane of the cell is leaving with it.
Right, yeah, the plasma membrane or the little vesicle it was in, unifies with the plasma membrane and it releases.
It only releases sweat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in an apocrine gland, so I like to think a part of the cell, okay? Apocrine kind of sounds like that. So you have this cell here, and when it releases its substance, basically the whole top of the cell, I'll just draw this scraggly stuff, is what's released. Okay, and so then it may mature, then part of the cell will regrow, form more membrane, and then release more. Okay, but a part of the cell is actually released. And then in holocrine, the whole cell becomes the product, okay? So H I know whole starts with a W, but the whole cell is released in the holocrine gland. A part of the cell is in the apocrine glands, and then none of the cell in the merocrine glands. Okay, yeah.
So would skin falling off technically be holocrine?
Well, it's not a gland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would be example of apocrine?
Apocrine is, let's see, mammary glands, I believe, are apocrine. So milk, I should say, not mammary. And then your sebaceous glands, which secrete oil onto your skin, are an example of a holocrine gland. So we've got glands, membranes, epithelium, essentially the basics of our tissues. Next week, Wednesday, we'll continue and we'll do muscles, nervous tissue, and connective tissue, okay?